The Department of Defense in the federal space is changing in the way that they want to procure capabilities, especially in the cyber and IT worlds. You better adapt with it. Because if you think the old ways of doing business are going to apply moving forward, you're going to miss the boat. Don't come in selling a widget. Come in solving a problem and learn to speak the language and get a dialogue going that ends up being sustained. That should be the end state of just about every engagement.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Future of GovCon. This is a weekly podcast to bring together experts from across the industry and look at what's happening today and how it's going to impact the future of our industry. I'm Jake Frazer. I'm the owner and CEO of Precision Talent Solutions. Leading one of the industry's top executive search firms, I get to talk to influencers every day. C-suite executives, board members, growth leaders, top government officials, military flag officers. And on this podcast, what we're doing is we're bringing in these experts from AI, from space, from medical, from logistics, from engineering. And we're sitting down and talking about what's happening in their specific area of the industry and how it will impact the future. So pour a cup of coffee and let's get started. Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Future of GovCon. Today, we're bringing in one of the guys that helped build the whole new concept for IT across the Army. We're honored to have with us today Lieutenant General retired John Morrison. John, welcome to the podcast.
Jake, thanks for having me. It's wonderful to be here. I appreciate the time.
Last time we had you doing one of these things, you had a beer in your hand. So this is a little bit different.
Just coffee today.
Yeah, good. And so those that don't know John, John just retired last year as the Army G6, the Deputy Chief of Staff, basically for IT, has a tremendous career, commissioned signal officer. Prior roles that he served was the Chief of Staff for Cybercom, so he knows a lot about cyber. He's also at the Army, the CG of the Army Cyber Center for Excellence. Also commanded the Army Network Enterprise Command, or NETCOM, and has a very diverse background, leading signal units across the Army. And so we're going to get to dig into his career a little bit. So we're really lucky to have John here today to share his views on where things are going, not just with Army IT, but also the broad spectrum of this fast-changing world we find ourselves in. That's a big windup for you, John. You ready to go through it?
I am absolutely ready to dive in.
Before we do that, I do want to get into John Morrison, Mr. John Morrison, as you are now, but get to know you a little bit about growing up. I know that you're also a fellow Army brat. Spent some time in the DoD school systems.
Absolutely. My dad was a career Army officer. He retired after 29 years of service to our nation. And so as a kid growing up, I had the opportunity to move all over the world, everywhere from France and Germany to multiple locations here in the United States.
Do you think it was like destiny for you to go in the Army because of your early experience?
I don't. But boy, am I glad it's the way that it worked out. There's always something about service that has appealed to me, and being a part of something that's bigger than you. And what better service can there be than service to our nation as a part of a team like the United States Army that is truly bigger than any one individual?
I think that Plato said soldiers begat soldiers. My father was also a career officer. My brother and I both were Army officers. My brother wound up making a career. My mom was a DoD school teacher. So I thought it was my destiny to spend a whole career, but I'm glad I got to spend some time in the Army. It's just a great experience.
Well, it's funny you say that, so as I was coming out of high school, I was actually being recruited to go to West Point. And my father actually talked me out of it. Now you got to remember this is the early 80s, coming out of the Vietnam War. And so I ended up going to Madison University, and it was not preordained that I was going to go into the military.
So you didn't go in ROTC straight up? You kind of joined while you were there?
Well, again, another funny story, so I played soccer for the university and I got injured my freshman year. And so I got redshirted. And what does a young kid who's a freshman in college do when the thing that they enjoy doing the most suddenly gets taken away? I had a pretty good time. My grades weren't awful, but they weren't exactly uh, dean's list level either. And so, unbeknownst to my mom and dad, I went and joined ROTC. I got a scholarship. And when my mom and dad did find out, my answer to them was, "You guys can't get mad at me for my grades anymore, but the Army sure can."
That's I know exactly. I was a soccer player. Same thing. I was going to go to West Point. I went up there to camp. To Coach Joe Chavaro was his name. Recruited me to come up there to play soccer at West Point. That's the worst thing they could have done. Is that I spent 2 weeks in the barracks. I was like, nope, I'm doing ROTC. Very interesting. And you kept playing as you got stationed in Europe, right?
I did for the first 4 years that I was there. And in the last year, the Gulf War happened, and that's when it sort of trailed off.
Where were you stationed in Europe?
We were stationed in Kaiserslautern
Okay.
in Western Germany.
Yeah.
And we were there for, 4.5, almost 5 wonderful years.
Great time in life. That's a great time in life. I was over in Würzburg in Schweinfurt in that area back when that was a thing. So also played on the town soccer team, which the Germans were amazed that an American even knew what soccer was. So
I mean, it's funny you say that. We would go to the first football club of Kaiserslautern games, the professional team that's there, and we were pretty sure we were the only Americans in the stadium.
probably so. Yeah, everybody else is focused on something else, but that's a pretty good fan base over there in Kaiserslautern. Uh, Talk about being a signal officer. Did you choose that, or did that choose you?
So a little bit of both. It was one of my top 3 choices. It wasn't my number 1 choice. But boy, what a blessing in disguise to actually get branched into the Signal Corps. Now, I had a business degree at coming out of college, so there was a lot of technical things that I needed to learn. But it was a great opportunity because I did have to learn a lot of things that were outside of my comfort zone. But those lessons have stuck with me about being adaptable, about continuing to learn, to continually think about the different ways that you can apply technology to solve operational problems. It was a godsend.
All right, John. So let's talk about the arc of your career and also the changes that you've seen that the Signal Corps has gone through from the early days, from crypto cards to SINGARs, in kind of Cold War area. I'm aging you a little bit. Peacekeeping and then GWAT, 9/11, and then through a couple of decades of that, and now this kind of new era we're in with Ukraine, with the Middle East back on fire, a new NATO. How have you seen at a high level? Have you seen the Signal Corps evolve?
Well, you are aging me, by the way, Jake. When I came in, we didn't even have Singars. That was like the new thing that was coming. And we had crank telephones, believe it or not. What has amazed me about the Signal Corps is I look over the course of my career, and especially these last 10 or 12 years, is the rate of change has just been tremendous. And the adaptability of the people that are inside the Signal Regiment and the cyber branch now, it's just unparalleled to just about anything that I've ever seen. It is almost constant change and the constant application of technologies that, like I said earlier, just solves wicked hard operational problems and gives commanders the capabilities they need when they may not even know that they need it. And so the arc has just been tremendous. The acceleration of technological change has been tremendous. And even more tremendous than both of that is the application of new technologies to solve those wicked hard operational problems.
On a topic kind of close to my heart, how have you seen the talent mix in the Signal Corps evolve and the challenges around recruiting? And now you're competing, really in a competitive space with industry, with commercial world. How have you seen the talent challenge evolve in the signal space?
It's been cyclical, is how I would sort of describe it. But I always harken back to that adaptability component. Y- Signaleers and cyber operators by design want to do new things. It's just a part of their psyche. And it's just been amazing to watch young men and women and older men and women take these new technologies and apply them in ways that are different than how somebody might have even envisioned. And it's better. And so that talent management component of it is very, very important. That personal adaptability is even more important because the reality of it is that the institution can't adapt its training and education models quick enough to keep up with the pace of change that we're seeing in industry and from a technological standpoint.
Have you you have a family? You have a family that's also getting like. Are any of them going towards the military? You have 4 daughters, right? Any of them interested in the military?
I have 4 daughters that are all grown and gone. None of them have an inkling for the military, but they all serve in their own ways, which, from a parent's perspective, is about all you could ever want.
Are any of them in technology? Are they involved in technology now?
No, they 2 of them are teachers. One is a lawyer, and another one supports various nonprofits up in the New Jersey area. Again, each serving
Yeah,
each in
fantastic,
their own individual way.
fantastic. Well, it's a new era in life for you. It's great to be able to watch the daughters grow. Talk talk a little bit. Let's go towards the end of your career. And I know you spent some time in combat units in the 82nd and First Cav, which I think is what you wear the combat patch for on your uniform. Talk about kind of the being a leader of a kind of a support branch and being in there with the combat units. How did you make your priorities known? And how did you, because the first priority of work we know is establish comms, right? And so how did you get a seat at the table when you're when you're, at the division headquarters or the corps headquarters?
Well, that's actually a great question, and I didn't have the opportunity to serve in the 82nd, but I did serve in multiple airborne organizations. You know, as a support guy, there's 2 things that I would commend. I mean, first off, it doesn't matter what branch you are, whether you're infantry, a logistician, a signaleer, what have you. When you're in a combat formation, you need to think like a maneuverist. And you integrate into the people that you're supporting, their operations, and you look at it through their lens. And as long as you get that level of integration, you're able to provide the support that a commander needs. But you have to integrate and bring value. And once you do that, getting to the table is not a challenge anymore because you're speaking a maneuverist, somebody like an infantryman language. And it doesn't matter if it's a combat organization or a business organization. If you're a supporter, that's how you have to approach the problem. Because if you don't, you're going to end up going off to the land of broken toys and you'll be an island all to yourself, never to be really heard from or to have that voice at the table that is so critical to being able to move, shoot, and communicate.
But I think from a distance, you tell me the role of the technology, and whether you call it signal, you call it cyber, it's moved from support to being almost the main effort now in some cases, right? With cyber being one of the domains, and defense and offensive cyber, and so it's really become a key part of the battlefield versus a support function where you're just trying to enable the maneuvering elements, right?
Absolutely. There's almost two aspects to it. The cyber domain is clearly an operational domain of which there needs to be maneuver, both from an offense and from a defensive perspective. And then I would submit to you that the data and the information that rides on our networks is the absolute critical enabler to being able to make informed decisions at speed faster than any adversary. And so it's the two components of it that are just really different than what it was 20, 30 years ago, where it was an afterthought.
That's right. So, I mean, early career, you have fragmented kind of local networks, and I know something you championed, particularly the latter stage of your career, is this idea of having a unified network, right? Um, did you come up against change management issues and getting the right budget and getting people to understand the criticality of having that unified network?
I'll take the latter one first. So it's an interesting thing when you're able to champion an idea and then suddenly it becomes everybody else's idea. And that's powerful because you want Army senior leaders saying, this is the way that we need to head, because all the other challenges are really, really tough if you don't have that level of senior leader buy-in.
So now you have a whole nother layer of vulnerability that you have to be able to protect against.
Yeah, and it's something that whether you're in industry or whether you're in government, writ large, we're all going to have to wrap our arms around. AI for the sake of AI is mildly interesting. AI to solve an operational problem or a business problem, fascinating, but it's got to be done securely.
It's I think that people are having a hard time separating AI and cybersecurity because they're so closely intertwined, right?
Well, yeah, I'll be candid. My concern is that people are embracing AI with not a full understanding of the cybersecurity implications. And so to me, there needs to be a tighter coupling between data and AI efforts and cybersecurity. And what I'm seeing is in some cases, for expediency,
Right.
there's a loosening of that relationship.
People are going for, I mean, AI moves you forward and cyber security kind of even slows you down, but it's what actually protects you, right?
Well, if you implement a true development, security, and operational development model, then it's baked in from the get-go, and you are able to gain that velocity and maintain that velocity that you want for innovation. But you have to bake it in on the front end. It can't be something that you try and tack on at the back end, because that will create a seam that an adversary can exploit.
Talk about your exposure. When in your career did you first really start working with government contracting?
So I was very fortunate with the brigade that I was blessed to command. It was a unique organization that handled the nation's most pressing operational needs. A contingency worldwide deployable unit that was just amazing to be a part of. It also had its own acquisition authorities and its own procurement budget, with the goal of doing two things. One, satisfying immediate operational needs, but then two, when you did something like that, turning it back to the services going, hey, here's an operational capability that you can now consume. And so a lot of experience on developing requirements, a lot of experience on actually working through an acquisition strategy, and then having PMs that could actually go out and execute it to include the contracting functions.
Do you think that experience at the brigade level is part of what made you more successful as you advanced in your career?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And models like that are what you are starting to see applied across the totality of the Department of Defense, where the requirements owner also has some level of say over the acquisition process and some level of influence, though not complete, over the contracting process. And by integrating all of the acquisition process underneath one person to make smart trades is leading to operational capabilities being delivered faster.
You mentioned in our prep call, you're talking about, what's going on right now in terms of the speed of acquisition, innovation, and the embracing dual use technologies and commercial capabilities. Um, in your view, is not necessarily new, not necessarily unique to this administration. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, so addressing modernization efforts across the Department of Defense has been an initiative that I've heard about since I was at least a major, if not even a little bit younger. Really since the Big Five were fielded in the early 90s, so think your Abrams tank and Apache helicopters, etc. There's been this constant struggle with modernization. And so every administration has attacked it. But what you've seen really accelerate over the last 5-6 years, I would submit to you, maybe even a little bit longer, is this tight fusion between what industry can do and the speed at which they can deliver things. And then how do you apply that rapidly to military operational problems so you can get good, solid, realistic capabilities in the hands of our formations quicker and sooner. And it's been a maturation process. There's been some starts and fits, no doubt, but you're continuing to see it evolve. And I think all the right steps are being taken to really press the department forward with that tight coupling. And you really are seeing it in the Army as they've gone in and realigned how they do acquisitions writ large by consolidating under portfolio acquisition executives, requirements, acquisition processing, and then support from contract.
If you're a company out there doing, you have you got a cool piece of technology. Let's say you're working with the Navy and you're doing well there. Um, how hard is it to move from an acquisition perspective over into an adjacent service like the Army?
Well, that's an interesting question. I can give you examples on both ends of the spectrum where it worked well in some regards, and in other regards, it didn't work well. I would offer two thoughts for our industry teammates. And now I'm looking at it from the lens of actually supporting industry partners. The first thing is selling a widget or a piece of tech to sell a piece of tech is mildly interesting again. Selling a capability or proffering a capability that solves an operational gap or problem is fascinating. So to use your analogy, if you are solving an operational problem in the Navy that you can articulate in Army terms, it's not going to be as difficult as I'm solving a Navy operational problem, but I can't articulate what problem I'm trying to solve for the Army. Again, it sort of goes back to the discussion we were having about, how do you get a seat at the table? Well, the way you gather interest is you describe to people the problem you're fixing. I'd be a rich man for the number of vendors that came into the office going, here's a cool piece of tech. And then I would go, how would I operation employment? What am I solving? And it was crickets. It did not make for a very good government industry engagement. But the folks that came in and said, hey, we've heard you're trying to solve a problem and get to a unified network. Here's where this capability fits. It worked like a champ.
Yeah. Now that you've had about a year now on the outside and working with different companies, and what would you go back and tell yourself when you're in uniform? What would you do differently? What are lessons learned that, man, if I could go back, here's what I would do to really, I could have done my job better as the Army G6.
So what I have been most impressed with is I've engaged with industry partners and now started to advise them is two pieces. One is the level of commitment that I'm seeing from the industry side, which is not always apparent when I was in the seat as the G6, as an example. And so there is a real desire to help, which is going to be very, very important in this rapidly changing world. The integration between the government and our industry partners, that coupling has got to get much, much tighter. But I would also say I would approach it differently by asking more detailed questions in terms of operational benefit. Because many industry partners don't understand or can't quite clearly articulate the operational benefit. But if you help guide them, in your own mind, you can make it clearer what is the operational benefit something could bring. And so I would have increased the dialogue on my side to be a little bit more probing as opposed to just letting the information come to me and then having a fairly quick dialogue. But if I saw somebody that was struggling like I just mentioned, I would have figured out a way to help them bring that benefit to the forefront so I can make a very, very clean distinction of no operational benefit or some level of operational benefit.
It's a dialogue, right? And it's got to go both ways. It's not a one-way conversation.
And I will tell you that, I offer two key pieces of advice to just about everybody that I talk to. The Department of Defense in the federal space is changing in the way that they want to procure capabilities, especially in the cyber and IT worlds. You better adapt with it, because if you think the old ways of doing business are going to apply moving forward, you're going to miss the boat. Don't come in selling a widget. Come in solving a problem and learn to speak the language and get a dialogue going that ends up being sustained. That should be the end state of just about every engagement. If it's a one-time engagement, it was a one-time engagement.
Yeah.
But a sustained engagement can lead to partnerships, and that is what the department is looking for.
There's that element of trust, right? You gotta believe in your partner, and you gotta help get to the answer together.
It has to be a partnership. And if it's transactional, it's not going to be a lasting relationship from my perspective.
So this administration's asked for 1.5 trillion budget for the Department of War. And no one knows how much that's actually going to come through, but it's a pretty strong signal. It's a 44% increase. And it's a strong signal of where things probably are heading. What should industry be, if you're talking to industry executives right now on boards, and what should they be doing to get ready for what I think is a imminent surge in requirements and investment, particularly in this technology space?
So they should be seeking the opportunities where they can demonstrate that they're going to be adaptive and they're going to be a strategic partner. The couple, again, I have to go back to the coupling between the Department of Defense and our industry partners is got to get strengthened, and we got to get more people underneath the tent. Because that speed of innovation that we've been talking about is only going to accelerate on us over the next couple years. And it's a great equalizer. All you have to do is look what's happened in Ukraine and elsewhere in conflicts around the world, and you can see how commercial tech, smartly applied in a tactical space, is a game changer. And so we all need to get into that mindset of what we field today may not be the capability that we're going to go fight with in 5 years. Completely different than when I was growing up in the military, where We had some of our communications assemblages for a decade.
Exactly.
Well, that simply will not work in today's space. And so being adaptive and being a partner, helping the government see what is in the art of the possible, and then leading to operational effects is going to be absolutely critical moving forward. Now, regardless of the size of the budget, whether it's $1 or 1.5 trillion, the government knows they need to change if they're going to keep pace with what's happening with some of our potential adversaries.
There's some urgency there. So let's look ahead. Let's look ahead, as we like to do, 3 years. We're in 2029. We're on probably the other side of this big budget surge because it's not sustainable. We're on the other side of hopefully some elections, and we're in a new phase, and a lot of the changes that are being implemented are flowing through. What does the military technology space look like, particularly as it pertains to industry? What, how integrated is industry? What are the priorities? How ubiquitous is AI? Give us a little sketch of how you see things in 3 years. It's a lot to unpack there.
I think things are going to continue to accelerate on this, and it's going to accelerate in multiple facets. You're going to see the world global order continue to accelerate in ways that, quite frankly, we don't even know right now. You're going to continue to see the need for innovation accelerate across all of the armed forces, because the old way to doing business simply won't work in today's world, and they won't work in the world of tomorrow. You're going to see the acceleration of that tight coupling between industry and the department, so that the latest and greatest capabilities are getting into the hands of our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians. It's just, and it is a national imperative that coupling increases. And again, more organizations and industry partners get under the tent, and not not a select few companies. Because I go back to what you just sat there and said, there's urgency there, and it's a national imperative that we're all working this together.
It's a paradigm shift, right? From the acquisition days of old, where there really was a wall between. And I think you're right. We got to move fast. We don't have time to play games with procurements and guessing what the other party wants. I think it's key.
But there's also models of long-term success in the Department of Defense, the special ops community, organizations like my old brigade. They've been in this cycle of innovation for decades, in constantly fielding capabilities that are cutting edge that can flow back into the services for their operational employment. We just need to build on those kind of models, make the smart tweaks that we need for the broader conventional portions of the services, right? And then make sure we've got the right guardrails on it, both from a cyber perspective and then from a evaluation perspective, to make sure that capabilities we're giving are secure and meet the needs of our young troopers out there.
Will there be a separate service for cyber in 3 years?
I don't know. I would sit there and say that there's definitely that potential. But, there's a new U.S. cyber commander, and I'm sure that you'll be given what is your perspective on it, and we'll see where the department goes. I can see some positives of it. I can see some negatives of it. I will just tell you that I know that our cyber forces are very, very capable today.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I always like to get one word from bright minds, John. What's one word you would use to describe the future of this Army technology, even not just Army, Department of War technology space, what's one word you would use to describe the future in the space?
Acceleration. I'm gonna stay with where I just was. I see this space continuing to evolve at faster and faster rates. I used to tell this story, when I would be talking to folks and I'd hold up an iPhone or whatever, your smartphone of choice was. And I go, who could imagine this 10, 15 years ago? Well, I think that 10, 15 year ago cycle is now shrinking dramatically. So just think about artificial intelligence. It was a theoretical discussion 3, 4 years ago, especially when you thought about applying AI in support of operations. And look at where we are today.
It's exponential. Yeah.
And I think that level of acceleration is just going to continue, excuse the pun, to accelerate.
Yeah. Exponential acceleration, because it's just moving faster and faster. Absolutely.
And so hence the importance of all of us being very, very adaptable, all of us not clinging to old institutional processes or old ways of doing business. It's going to be incumbent on all of us to be adaptable so that we can continuously innovate and, more importantly, provide the capabilities that our troopers need.
Yeah. Fascinating. It's exciting. I mean, it's historic times in this industry, and it's good to have you on this side too, sharing your perspective of decades of service. Super excited to have the chance to continue to work with you, John. We look forward to seeing you out there as part of our community. I know you're doing good things to help companies, and we're definitely happy to help you up, connect you with people that are looking for your kind of expertise.
Well, Jake, thank you very much for the time, and I enjoy the partnership.
Awesome. Everybody, I hope you enjoyed the podcast today. I say it every week, and I mean it because it's true that the future of GovCon is happening today. So stay in the loop, stay tuned on what's going on. We'll see you next week. All right, so thanks for joining me on another episode of the Future of GovCon. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation and some of the bold predictions. If you did, take a second, share it on your social media, subscribe on YouTube. If you have any ideas for future guests or topics you'd like to have covered, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm always there, and you can always learn more about precision talent solutions at pts.careers. Look forward to seeing you next week on our next episode.